RPC. Now.
No, I don't want your own, please. Okay, we're about to start the class now. Please be seated. Please be seated. Thank you. Okay, those online, welcome to class. Good afternoon. We'll be starting with the correction of the SNAP test before we go into the topic for today. Now, yesterday we started with the overview on property law practice. Mr. Sam, hope you have sent the link out. I hope I'm live already. Okay. So that those online will not be saying, where's Mr. Caleb? I'm here. Mr. Sam, the other live class call. Be fast though. Okay, let's continue. Now, before I go into the answers, like I said yesterday, we are going to properly analyze the scenario. Please, no noise. Chief Ezenwa and Ojifo and Son Enterprise, owned by Mr. Agbato and Chief Bernard Ojofo, both residing at number 45 Starline Estates, GRA, Port Harcourt, River State. He embarked on a corporate restructuring initiative, including the establishment of a corporate head office within Port Harcourt, River State. To facilitate this endeavor, they have duly authorized. They have duly what? Authorized. Please underline the word authorize and write donation of what? Power. Some of you did not have donation of power in your transaction you answered with the way I've seen, so you know you're already losing out of certain mark. The word authorized there is not just an English word. I told you yesterday that sometimes when you see some term, they don't look English. They are to tell you and write donation of what? Who is that person? Can never be named.
Disconnected.
Okay, let's continue. Authorize Mr. Guda Bachelor, located at number 47 Old Aba Road, Port Harcourt, to initiate negotiation with the Enafa family for the acquisition of 4 parcels of land. Now, the moment I say the word acquisition or to acquire, I underline that and I say contract of sale of what? Land. So we have identified many transactions so far. 1 is what? Donation of power. And 2 is what? Now, this property is currently held under the legal aspects of certificate of occupancy, dated April 14th, 1988, and registered as 12/12/1776 at the land registry. In the event of the successful transaction, the company intends not only to construct its corporate head office, but also to allocate a portion of the building for a period of 5 years. For a period of how many years? 5 years. Now, the moment I say a period of 5 years, listen carefully. Yes, I know it's a lease, but I will not be carried away because I just saw that the property is covered with certificate of what? So I will identify it as a sub-lease. Some of you don't go back. You don't do the doctrine of going back. So what I will identify it as is a sub-lease. Because the property is covered with certificate of what? Occupancy. But let's continue. I'm not done. No, sub-lease doesn't. No. In fact, lease is a general term. But to be specific in by exam, You must give us the specific transaction. No. Lease is the main name. So it has children.
No, I
Not
know
like,
it's a trouble.
yes.
Because of that.
Now lie, not possible. Now let's continue. Please, no noise. Please, no noise. Subject to mutual terms. Now the family representing this land comprises of Chief Kruku and Nafa as the family head, alongside Madam Sonia and Mr. Fajay, both serving as principal member. The agreed consideration for the land purchase stands at 250 million. Now answer the following question. Now it is time to answer the question based on what we have analyzed so far. So A says, now listen, A is almost like a 3-in-1 question. So I will advise you that your answer should also be in 3-in-1 formats. Mention the transaction completed in the scenario above, comma, that's the first paragraph. The document needed to be effected in each transaction, another question. And persons responsible for drafting each document. So it's a 3-in-1 answer we're going to be giving based on the scenario. So let me tell you how I'm going to start. Please, no noise at this point. What's the noise all about now? Now, the answer is simple. The transactions contemplated in the scenario are 1, donation of what? If you say power of attorney, I will give you power. Number 1 is donation of what? Power. Number 2 is contract of sale of what? Land. And number 3 is sublease. And number 3 is what? Now, that's the first paragraph. The next line I will go. The documents to be prepared will be 1, power of what? Attorney. 2, deed of what? Assignment. And 3, deed of sublease. Yes, now? Is deed of assignment, oh, if you like, go and prepare contract of sale agreement. That one does not transfer any legal title. If you like, we're saying that. Now let's continue. That's not, I don't say what I did not tell you. That's what I told you. Read your notes. I'm not telling you what are the type of documents, initial or final. I say what are the documents. So you have to prepare a final document and not an initial. You're a lawyer. Contract of sale of land will not do anything to sale of land. What transfer title in sale of land is the deed of what? So what are you looking at type of document for? That's it now. So that's is deed. Okay, you can't use contract of sale because it does not transfer interest in itself. That's the best thing. No, it's correct now. If you are not sure, why do you not write the 2 of them for me? Why do you not write contract of sale of land / deed of what? Now. It's not the same thing, no. Don't even try it. It's not the same thing. We are going to learn the difference very shortly. Calm down. Now, I'm not done yet before you distract me. And I said the 3rd document is deed of sub what? Lease. Now, the last paragraph says who prepare each document. Power of attorney is prepared by the donor or his solicitor. Deed of assignment prepared by the assignee solicitor. Or if you have used the contract of sale of land with the / this vendor or his what? Solicitor. And for deed of sublease, it is prepared by the sublessor's solicitor. It's prepared by who class? Sublessor solicitor. Now let's go to B. So if your answer is not 3-in-1, you will not get all the 3 points correctly. It's a 3-in-1 question. Transaction, document, and who prepare each document. Now B. Mention 5 laws applicable to the above what? Scenario. Now, the truth is this. You have to apply laws that regardless of location or regardless of transaction, they are always applicable. Number one, the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. Number two, the Land Use Act. Number two is what, class? Number three, the Stamp Duties Act. Number four, Legal Practitioners Act. Number five, Rules of Professional Conduct. Now, you may want to even add Conveyancy Act because the location is in River State. Go and write. See, let me tell you the truth. See, if you go and write Conveyancy law, they will be the one to deny you. I said they will be the one to deny you. There is no law. They have always had this law even before the council of election set up the curriculum. But law class stick with the word Conveyancy Act. So if you're going to use law on your own, I know now.
No, River State is under Conveyancy State.
They have always domesticated them before now. It's not a today thing now. I will tell you because that's not what is in your curriculum. Yes. Don't mind, you cannot now. Eh? You can add it now because of companies that are there. Yes. I'm not marking it, so I don't need to see. You don't need to tell me what you write. Once I read it and I see that it makes sense. Stamp Duties Act, which is FRS. That's Stamp Duties Act now. You are calling body for law. You are saying that's true. Now let's continue. C, please no noise. Draft the commencement of the initial documents that the party will exchange concerning sale of what? Land. Now this is initial document concerning the contract of what? Sale. The answer is this contract of sale of land agreement. Full stop. This contract of sale of land agreement. Full stop. Okay, do you not see consigning the sale of land? Power of attorney is between the people, the first people. But consigning the sale, it is this contract of sale of land. That is initial document. Power of attorney is between the donor and the donee. You not see the word consigning the sale? I'll say it again. Consigning the sale. Consigning the sale. The initial document is this contract of sale of land agreement. No, eh? Which one? I will write, but there is not the initial document. I will know what to do. Leave it for me. I can cancel the toilet for you. I'll give you zero. It's not commencement. Now, commencement stopping. That's what I stop. What you are drafting is the introductory. Now let's continue. D. Comment on 4 ethical duty owed by you as solicitor to Mr. Ezewa and Chief Bernard. Number one, your first duty. Duty of devotion. Duty of what? If you cannot remember rule 14, rule 1. Number 2, duty to act within the bounds of the law. Because you are representing them in property transaction, so you must advise them within the bounds of the what? Law. Rule 15. Number 3, duty of competency. You must be competent in handling your client's case, which is rule 16. And lastly, we have rule 23. Is 23, Abby? Yes. Duty not to what? No. Rule 22. No, not rule 22 yet. Rule 23 now. Duty not to interfere with the personal property of the client. Duty not to what? Say your rule 3 now. No, don't worry. You're not, are you afraid of rule 3? Duty not to aid the unauthorized practice of the... Is it part of property duty? 22 is taking client instruction. 23 is property. When I'm marking, I will know whether you do over Sabina. Don't be asking me that question. Now let's go to today's topic, please. So today we are looking at the topic deed. Now please, today's topic is come with a lot of instruction. So those of you that don't know where commencement stop, I beg you, after today you will know where commencement stop. When I said draft commencement, some of you drafted the whole part of the deed. And I said commencement, oh. Somebody you know? You know? No, I don't think she's the one. Let's draft what? Let's look at the topic what? Deed. Now let's write. Deed are instruments. I've started teaching, please. I've started teaching. Deed. Deed are instruments used in transferring interest in property transaction. I'll say it again, class. Deed are instruments used in transferring what? Interest in property transaction. I'll say it again. Deed are what? Instruments used in transferring what? Interest in what transaction? For the last time. Deed are instruments used in transferring what? Interest in property what? Transaction. Let's look at the next heading. Features of a deed. What are the basic features or elements of a deed? Features of a what? Number one, it must be in writing. Number one, features of a deed. I'll say it again, class. Number one is what? So what is the first feature of a deed? It must be in what? Writing. No problem, man. Features of a deed. Number one, I said, it must be in what? Number two, it must be signed by the parties. One, it must be in writing. Two, it must be what? Signed by the parties. It must be what, class? Number two or three, now, it must be delivered. Number three, it must be what? Number four, it must be under seal. Number four, it must be what? I'll say it again. It must be what? You can add number five. Number five, it must be attested. I hope you know what attestation is. Number five, it must be what? Attested. And lastly, it should contain franking. And lastly, it should contain what? Franking. Hope you know what it means to frank. Who can tell what franking is? The solicitor who prepares the what? Document. So what are the basic features of a valid deed? Number one. Number two. Number three. Number four. Number five. And lastly, it must contain what? Franking. Now let's write. Therefore, a deed must be signed, sealed, and delivered. Therefore, a deed must be what? Signed, sealed, and what? Delivered. I'll say it again. Therefore, a deed must be what? Signed, sealed, and what? Delivered. Now listen carefully, class. Listen. You see, when you talk about the instrument called deed, one of the things that make a deed stand out is that it must be signed, sealed, and what? And miss other features I just mentioned. These are the three major features. Signing, sealing, and what? The next heading. When does deed becomes effective? When does deed, please put that phone on silent now. When does deed becomes effective? When does deed becomes what? Want to find out. Haven't looked at the feature of a deed. When does this deed becomes what? Effective. Now let's write. A deed becomes effective upon delivery. Look at it, class. So, a deed becomes effective upon delivery. For the last time, class, a deed becomes what? Effective upon what? So when you talk about the signing, the sealing, and the delivery, it does not take effect upon signing. It does not take effect upon sealing. But when does it take effect, class? Now let's write. Delivery can be classified into the following. Delivery can be classified into the following. I'll say it again. Delivery can be what? Classified into the what? A. Absolute delivery. A is what? Now be paying attention. Number one is absolute what? So let's explain what we mean by absolute delivery. Now let's write. These are delivery without condition. I'll say it again. Absolute delivery. These are delivery without what? Condition. The parties agree that the transfer of interest should be delivered, but do not place any condition. What do we call that delivery? And B, conditional delivery. And B is what, class? Now let's write. These are delivery with certain condition. Conditional delivery. These are delivery with certain what? Condition. Such as obtaining the governor's consent. I'll say it again. We have two types of delivery majorly. One is absolute delivery, and the other one is conditional what? Delivery. And it is absolute where they have no condition, but it is conditional expressly where they are setting what? Condition. An example of this condition is obtaining the governor's what? Now let's write. Conditional delivery is also called. Now this is where lots is even concerned about. Not, they know you know conditional, but the other name. Conditional delivery is also called delivery in escrow. I'll say it again. Conditional delivery is also called delivery in what? Escrow. E-S-C-R-O-W. I'll say it again. Conditional delivery is also called what, class? Now let me explain to you what you must understand about this delivery. You see, you may not appreciate it now, but please, don't be like student that you just see delivery in escrow and you think that that's the answer only. There was a scenario the law school painted in MCQ. Listen carefully to how the MCQ went. The parties agree that the deed will take effect upon obtaining the governor's what? Upon obtaining the what? And they ask, what type or when does the deed become effective? Or what form of effectiveness is the delivery? And they put A. What's the option? No? A. Conditional delivery. A is what? B. They had absolute delivery. B is what? C. Delivery in escrow. C is what? And D was A or C. D was what? Now if you go for A alone, you will fail it. If you go for C alone, you will what? The answer was D. A or what? So it's either conditional what? Or delivering what? Now why they recommend several textbooks for you is this again. If you take a textbook, what you see there is just conditional what? You pick another author textbook, you see delivering what? So if you read one and you not read the other one, you are tempted to pick either A. That's for those of you that read this textbook. All of you go for A. All of you that read this textbook, all of you go for what? C. All of you that buy the two textbooks, that's if you remember, you go for what? D. Now see, this is the stress of education. Because of one question now, you separate two authors. Author conditional delivery there. Delivery in escrow. Unknown to students, both of them are saying the same thing. And what Lost wanted to establish is this. They wanted to be sure that you understand what you are reading. Because sometimes you can actually pick one, thinking that after I've tried now, they are interchangeable. So let me just pick A, or let me just pick C. But please, I keep saying it again. Law school is not about what is correct. Law school is about what is most appropriate. The most appropriate answer is not A. A is correct. C is also correct. But the most appropriate was D, because it had both A or C. Is that point clear, class? So please, if I beg you, if you want to read your note to pass by exam, you have to adopt the eagle eyes method. Read in between the what? Lines. Class, for the last time. If you don't see conditional delivery, what will you go for? And if you don't see delivery in escrow, what do you go for? And when you see both of them together, what will you go for? Both of them. That's the teaching. When you see both, go for both of. Don't select. You see, there are some topics that selective teaching will not work. I must tell you that this is conditional delivery, also known as delivery in what? Escrow. Is that point very clear, class? And they are subject to certain conditions, such as obtaining the governor's what? Consent. Is that point very clear? The next heading, type of deed. Types of what? Deed. Now, please pay attention now. We have learned just now that conditional delivery is also delivering what? And when we jam MCQ question, or when we see MCQ question, we are not to pick one over the other. If they provide for both, we have to go for the option that chooses delivery in escrow and conditional what? Delivery. But this time, we are looking at types of what? Number one, deed poll. Number one is what? Now listen carefully, class. Number one is what? Now we are not just writing deed poll. We must know what is deed poll and practical example of a deed what? Now let's write. These are deed executed by one party. Now class, do not just write notes. Please pay attention to my choice of words. These are deed executed by what? One party. I could have said one person and you'd be clapping for me like, wow, it's correct. It's still one. But if you write one person, you understand what I'm about to say now. I'll say it again. Deed poll are deed executed by how many parties? One party. Did I say one person? No. What did I say? One party. Now, don't write. Let me just do a brief question again. Now, power of attorney is an example of deed poll. But let's now ask in the MCQ. A power of attorney should be executed by dash. A, one person. B, one party. C, two persons. And D, none of the. Now, there's every temptation to shade one person. Let me lie to you. You will shade one person because your emphasis is just one. Deed poll, one. Some of you will say, okay, let me shade one person. You shade one party. Let's just shade like that. It's the same thing. Let me tell you what is the problem now. One thing law school is trying to checkmate again. It's not that you are reading. They want to see whether you are paying attention to details. So if you shade one person, you are wrong. The answer is what? One party. So if I were you, underline the word one party, please. So, deed poll is executed by who, class? Is it one person? No. You're not shouting no. For the last time, deed poll. Deed poll is executed by who? Class, for the last time? Okay, let's continue. Example of deed poll are power of attorney and deed of gifts. Example of deed poll is what? Power of attorney or what? Deed of gifts and deed of gifts. We have power of attorney and what? Deed of gifts. Now listen carefully, class. We have two examples of a deed poll. And one is power of attorney, and the other one is deed of what? Gift. Now, what they have in common is that they are executed by one party only. Not one person, no. But how many party? For the last time. Why do we call them deed poll, class? So, if you ask in the MCQ, power of attorney is executed by dash. Will you say one person? What will you write? Now, listen carefully. You see, when people now say, okay, me and my friend, we are very intelligent, but I don't know why I made a 2-1 and he made a first class. Now, one of the reasons is one, when the review committee come and they try, maybe both of you even make first class F, and they try to review your terms. By the time they keep saying one person and he's still saying one party, they keep reducing mark. They have every justification to drop you down to 2-1 and say, okay, this person used the right choice of what? Words. Some of you are not careful with your choice of words, I'm telling you. And it's not your fault. Sometimes when you hear people teach, you just believe, you can just say what you like. It's not true. Law school is not an institution that you say what you like. Law school is an institution that teach you based on what the law is. So for the last time, did poll, is it one person or one party? And what example of did poll? And number 2, did indenture. Number 2 is what? Now watch the difference. Yes, please. Yeah. Oh, no, it's not the same thing. No. I understand. That change of name now, it's not using affidavit now. They are now using deed poll. Now, why is deed poll? Because it's only the person that is changing his name that affixes his signature. That's why it's because of the signature part of it. One party, not one person. That's why it's a deed poll. So anything that you see that has the word deed poll, what the major feature, the content may be different, but what is common in all of them is if you check the execution, it is not executed by both parties. Just one party only. That's why it's deed poll. Now let's continue. Number 3 is what, class? Now, the same way I emphasize on the word party, you will not hear me say person again. I will still remain on the word party. Now let's write. These are deed executed by 2 or more parties. What we have just said? These are deed executed by how many parties? For the last time. These are deed that is executed by how many parties? 2 or more parties. Now listen carefully to why it is 2 or more parties. Now that means the only way to identify a type of deed is by going to the execution. If it is executed by one party, deed poll. If it is executed by 2 or more parties, deed what? So let's write. Example of deed indenture are example of deed indenture are deed of assignment. Example of this is deed of what? Assignment. So who execute deed of assignment? That's the assignor or what? Or sometimes there are 3 parties, assignor, and as well as assignee. The next one we have is deed of mortgage. The next one is deed of what? Mortgage. Now let me now tell you what mistake students also make again. I am teaching you now that deed indenture is executed by 2 or more what? Parties. Some of you will now go to the bar exam. They will tell you, draft the execution and attest. You will see what some of you used to do. Though you have not done it before because you have not written by exam. I'm talking about based on experience of other people. They will just write, signed, sit down what? By the assignor in the presence of name, occupation, signature, and what? They'll be carried away. They'll go to the next question. They are not done drafting because a deed indenture requires you to execute for both parties. So when you are done with the assignor, you have to start again. Sign, seed, and what? By assignee. Some students like dashing law school half mark. So if that question was actually 6 mark, they end up getting only 3. Which 4? Where do you want to give them 4? It's a two-way thing now. You have to draft, you are too generous of giving them 4. What do you want to give them 4? Execution is 6 mark, and as a deed indenture, you are expected to draft for both parties. You have to draft for assignor and draft for assign. But because of you said no time, you're in a hurry, you drafted for only assignor and forget assignee. What you get is 3/6. And when you say, why am I getting 3/6? And you know, the most time, you are telling us, well, I don't need this mark complete, just give me half. By the time they give you half of everything over 80, I hope you know that half is already 40. And that does not even mean that you are sure with all the answers you have gotten or, so you are playing with 22. Yes, if I'm looking at it technically. You say law school, take half, I don't want. So out of 80 questions, you dash law school 40. You are now working with 40. And in that 40, you and I know you can't get all the 40 correct. And that's how people get it wrong in by exam. Please, when you are asked to answer a question, sit down and understand what the question is. Like today now, if I go through some of you, I noticed out of the 3 transactions, some of you only identified 2. You only identify, even the one you identified was even wrong. Instead of sub-lease, you identify it as what? Lease. So it means the only thing you got correctly was contract of sale of. And let's imagine that this question is compulsory and was awarded 9 marks. It means you only get 3/9. 3/9. So just imagine you have lost already 6 marks already. What assurance do you have that the remaining 3 questions that I asked, you will get them all correct? Okay, I now ask you to give me ethical issue. Instead of you to give me ethical issue and no, just write rule 1. You are trying to impress me. You go and write rule 10 in place of rule 15. You go and write rule 11 in place of rule 13. And you are trying to impress me. You are just sending me to early depression. And I'll forward it back to you. When you see students seeing their result and they are being depressed, it's because they try to impress. And the other one says, I'm not impressed already. So let me reply you with depression. So if you don't know the rule, just leave it as rule 1, or just state the ethical issue without attaching any subsequent rule. Now, I say draft commencement. Some of you say, no, sir, that commencement is too short. Let me give you the introductory parts. You say, this tenancy agreement made this, that. You put reciter. Therefore, the party reciter, only me, you ought to kill me. Now. That's not the plan. I did not call your name now. Guilty conscience is bad though. You say small secret. You did not tell me anything, no. I did not hear anything. So let's continue, class. So where did we stop? We said deed of what? We have deed of lease. We have deed of what? I have this deed of mortgage. Deed of what? Lease. We have deed of sublease. We have deed of lease. We also have deed of what? Sublease. And we also have deed of conveyance. Deed of what? Conveyance. Now, what is common in all these deeds is that they are executed by 2 or more parties. They're executed by how many parties? 2 or more. And you can also say at least 2 parties. That when you say at least, it is minimum of 2, but no, the maximum is. So class, what's the difference between deed poll and deed indenture now? Okay, let's say it this way. Which of them is deed poll, first of all? Don't say one person, no. What did I say? Then deed indenture. Can you give an example of deed poll? One example of deed poll. One example of deed indenture. Or deed of assignment. All these deeds, a good lawyer, when you peruse them, once you see that the deed is executed by 1 party, is a deed poll. When you see 2 parties, is a deed indenture. Is that point very clear? Yes. Let's go to the next heading. Transaction that must be by deed. Transactions that must what? Be by deed. We are not just teaching you how to draft deed. We must lay the principle correctly. Transaction that must be by what? Or you can say when deed is what? Required. When do we require to prepare a what? Deed. Number 1, transfer of interest in sale of land. Number 1, transfer of what? Interest in what? Sale of land. I'll say it again. Number 1, transfer of what? Interest in sale of what? If you are engaging in any transfer of interest, that's to do with sale of land, it must be by what? Deed. Number 2, creation of legal mortgage. Number 2, creation of what? Legal mortgage. I did not say creation of mortgage or what my teaching. Because if I say creation of mortgage, it may mean legal or equitable. table. And I know that not all equitable mortgage are by what? Deed. So the answer, what I said rather, is creation of legal what? Number 3, lease exceeding 3 years. Lease exceeding what? 3 years. I'll say it again. Lease exceeding what? 3 years. Number 4, voluntary surrender. Voluntary what? Surrender. And number 5, vesting declaration. And number 5 is what, class? Vesting declaration. Before we go to the next one, please let's digest what we have said so far. We are looking at when is deed required. Now, when we say the word required, we mean when is deed mandatory. So, can we recite what we have written so far as to when deed is required? Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5. Let's look at the next heading. When deed may not be required. When is deed not what? Required. Please listen. When you are asked to draft in by exam, it's not everything you will be writing, sign, seed, and what? Because some students, that's the only thing they have crammed in property law. Anytime say draft execution, you just see them say sign, sealed, and what? And they don't know that they need deliverance. You can't be doing sign, seed, and deliver every time. So I want to look at what are those transactions that even though you sign a loan, it is sufficient because it need not be by what? Number 1, assents. Number 1 is what? Assent. Now listen, I'm not just going to write assent, though it's not the time to teach it, but I'll just explain it. Number 1 is what? Assent. Now listen, don't write, just listen to my explanation. When I'm done, you may decide to form it in any other way because it's not the time to teach it. Now the word assent is a document usually prepared in these circumstances. Now let me paint the story now. If a man writes a will, if a man writes a what? Follow my storyline. It means for there to be assent, there must be a what? A will. And I hope you know that will is a testamentary document made by someone called the testator. So I'm going to do like a story now. A man wrote a will, and in his will, he gave his landed property. He gave his what? To his first daughter in the will. Now the first daughter wants to sell that property because the man is dead and that property has been given to her. But before she could sell it, the buyer said, I want to see proof of ownership. And he said, the proof is my father's will. If I were you, run. What did I say? They want to sell you fake documents. Now, what you should rather ask is that when you say the proof is your father's will, you say, that's not what I'm looking for. The will is not the proof of title in landed property. Rather, if you are giving a landed property in a will, the personal representative ought to prepare an assent, which literally transfer the property from the will to the beneficiary. And what constitutes the good root of title in such bequeath is an assent. So what I've just said is that assent is used to transfer landed what? Property to a beneficiary. And for that person to be a beneficiary, there must be an existing will. So do you know what assent is now, class? Yes. Listen, class, do you know what assent is now? Yes. So what is the good root of title if you want to inherit a landed property from a will? What will you prepare? Assent. Now, who prepares this assent? I said it just now. Who prepared this assent? Now, why am I not giving you as a note now? Because there's a topic we will teach in property law where I will digest the topic assent. It's still premature to know assent, but now all you need to know about assent is that it is prepared by personal what? To transfer landed what? Property in a will to a beneficiary. So what constitutes the beneficiary's title is not the copy of the will. What constitutes his title? Like, what constitutes the title of a beneficiary? Now this assent, will it be signed, sealed, and delivered? It will not be. The law is that when it comes to assent, it should only be in writing and not by what? Deed. Number 2, lease of 3 years and below. Number 2, lease of how many years? 3 years and what? Below. Open a bracket and write tenancy agreement. That's what I mean. Lease of how many years? 3 years and below. Thank you. Lease of how many years? 3 years and what? So open a bracket and write what? Tenancy. Now this should be, okay, good. Number 3, we have vesting order. Number 3 is what? Class, listen. Number 3 is what? Now let's pause. I have said a vesting before. And the vesting I said before, I will cast your mind back, was vesting declare. This one now is vesting. Now why am I drawing your attention to this? Let me tell you what about law school. Law school believe that students are clouded with hasty generalization. You are reading, but you're not paying attention. You have read and you have seen the word vesting, but you don't know which of them is writing and which of them is by what? Did. You hurriedly read those topics. And the next thing, you will see an MCQ question. All must be by deed. All must be by what? Except one. Then you now see option having A, vesting declaration. B, vesting order. Now that's when you now understand the confusion. You have not seen, see, when you see real confusion, you now be looking at the both of them. Vesting declaration, vesting order. Which of them, which one I read that time? Vesting declaration. These people. And you know the two other options, you already know that those ones must be by deed. Maybe they now put lease exceeding 3. You know that one is by deed already. They now put transaction in sale of what? You know that one is by deed. But the only two things you'll be confused now, is it vesting declaration or vesting? Now let me say this, let me explain to you why and why. See, it's not by knowing the name or cramming them, but you must know the reason why they are called this. Now listen carefully. When you hear the word vesting declaration, it's like someone who is trying to give out his landed property to someone for without consideration, often referred to as deed of gifts somehow. Now, any transaction without consideration, the law says it must be by what? Deed. It must be by what? And no wonder vesting declaration must be by deed before it is what? Valid. Now, in the other one, look at the other one. So look at the statement too. I did not say vesting declaration now. I'm saying vesting order. Vesting what? Now, from the word order, it means it was declared by the court. It was declared by the what? And anytime the court wants to deliver judgment, the court judgment should be in writing. That is why one of the valid features of judgment is that it must be signed and dated. It must be signed and what? Go and check. There is nothing like judgment like sign, seal, and deliver. We don't have deed of judgments. What we have is judgment, and the Constitution says every judgment must be reduced into what? Writing. So based on that fact, when you hear the word order, it means it's emanating from the court. And the court do not prepare deed. Whatever the court prepare are always in what? Writing. So my question, between vesting order and vesting declaration, which of them is a deed? Which of them is in writing? So in case you ask a question, all must be by deed. All must what? Except one. A, vesting declaration. B, vesting order. C, legal mortgage. And D, none of the above. Which of them need not be by deed? So what should vesting order be by? So vesting order should be in what? Writing. Number 4, voluntary surrender by operation of law. Number 4, voluntary surrender by what? Operation of what? Law. That is surrender by operation of what? Law. Now listen, when you hear the word surrender by operation of law, this is what it means. Operation of law means death, insanity, or what? Bankruptcy. So for example, if somebody is dead, can the person prepare any document? Can a dead person prepare a document? If the person becomes insane, will he prepare any document by deed? No. So the best that can happen is that it can only be reduced into what? To evidence that that has happened. But it will never be by what? Deed. So we have surrender by operation of what? Number 5, equitable mortgage. Number 5 is what? Now, the first one I mentioned, what mortgage was it? The next one I'm mentioning is what? We have number 5 as equitable what? Mortgage. And lastly, power of attorney. And lastly is what? Power of attorney. And number 6 we have is power of what? Attorney. So let's look at it again. What are the documents that need not be by deed? Number 1. Document that need not be by deed should be sale of land. Be coming down. Be coming down. Yes, please. Yes, contract of sale. Okay, yes. Bankruptcy. Okay, now listen, I understand what she's saying. Document that need not be by deed. She's actually correct, though. Contract of sale of what? I was thinking you were saying the transaction, the sale of land itself. Sale of land must be by what? Deed. But contract of sale of land agreement. You must put the word agreement. If you don't put that word agreement, it's a different thing. It's not this one, no. It's this one I'm talking about. So let's continue. Now let's add that statement she just made, even though it's by mistake. Number 7, contract of sale of land agreement. Number 7, contract, there must be agreement, oh. Contract of sale of land agreement. Good. That's the 7th document that need not be by what? Deed. So let's recite. When is deed not required in property transaction? Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. By operation of what? Number 5. Number 6. And number 7. Contract of sale of land agreement. Now, why we need this topic is this. Listen, class. This topic comes in the way of MCQ and as well as what? Theory. But my fear is not even the theory part. Because in theory, you can actually list 2 or 3 of document by deed. Because they can ask you, list 3 transactions that must be by what? And any 3 that need not be by deed. So in that case, you can say 1, in this side, legal what? Mortgage. Contract exceeding 3, that is lease exceeding 3 years, and vesting declaration, if you remember. Then in this one, you say what? Assent. Transaction less than 3, which is tenancy agreement, and vesting order. Now, but my fear is MCQ. All must be by deed except 1. All must what? Except what? You see, A, legal mortgage. B, lease exceeding 3 years. C, assets. C is what? And D, none of the above. Which of them should not be by deed there? What's the answer, class? Now let's go to the next heading. Parts of a deed. The next heading is what? Now please, parts, P-A-R-T. Parts of a what? Deed. Now, please, before I go further, let me say something. Please, always read your subtitle before you go to the content. I'll say it again. Always read your what? Now, I did not say content of a deed. Listen, class. I did not say what? What did I rather say? Now, let me tell you why I'm saying that. You see, there's a topic that says content of a deed. Some author, they like to call their own content of a what? Deed. And when they call it content, they will provide 18 contents. To provide how many contents? 18. And when some authors say parts, they'll provide only 4. They'll provide how many? 4. Now this is the teaching. When the word is parts, a deed has 4 parts. But when the word is content, a deed has 18 content, which are going to be seen very clearly. Now it means that in each part, there are several contents. For example, introductory part has 4 contents. Operative part has 7. So when you add 7 plus 4, how many is that? Miscellaneous part has 2 contents. 11 plus 2 now is how many? And concluding part has 5 contents. 13 plus 5 is how many? So when the question is MCQ, how many contents does a deed have? Will you go for 4? How many contents does a deed have? Will it be 4? But how many parts does a deed have? How many? Now, the teaching is this. Law school is not just concerned about your reading. They want you to pay attention between the word parts and the word content. And let me say this. The word content can be substituted with the word clause. With the word what? If you don't see the word content, another word you see is what? Today, I did not say draft introductory parts. What I rather said, draft the commence. So the moment you draft commencement, dates, parties, and recital, you have drafted for me introductory part. You have now set yourself apart as a member of Council of Legal Edu. So you have to mark your script by yourself. What I ask you is commencement and not part. So please, one of the disciplines you are going to be learning is when does the examiner require parts and when do it require what? Content. So let's start. What is the heading before I proceed? Class, what is the heading for today's subtopic? Now let's write. A deed is made up of 4 parts. I've started teaching. A deed is made up of 4 parts. I'll say it again. A deed is made up of how many parts? Now let me say this. Some of you, that's how I have to teach you how to write English. Yes. When I say a deed is made up of 4 parts, this is how some of you write it. A, D-E-E, deed, I-S, made, M-A-D-E, of, 4 in figure. You can't be writing words and all of a sudden turn to figure. You don't do that professionally. You have to write F-O-U-R. Some of you, this is how you write in by exam. This is how you write in by exam. I'm warning you. You can't be writing word and figure interchangeably. This is not secondary school. This is professional exams. If you have to even write the 4 in figure, you have to put it in an enclosed brackets. Please. These are the ways you write in the exam. You say, why is it that my grade is dropping? They review your script too. They review how you write. By exam is a professional exam. So they believe that if you are writing, so if I say write 4 million now, you will write 4 and million. If I say write 4,000, you even write 4K. Yes. You write 4K. 4K. Who is 4K? Who is 2K? Say urgent 2K. Now let's continue. A deed is made up of how many parts? Now listen. It's me that is shouting 4. But you see, this by exam, you need wisdom. We'll get there very soon. A deed is made of how many parts? Number 1, introductory parts. Number 1 is called what? Magic still happen. Watch carefully. Number 1 is what part? Number 2, operative parts. Number 2 is operative parts. Number 2 is what part, class? Number 3, miscellaneous parts. Number 3 is what? If you calm down. Number 3 is miscellaneous what? And number 4, concluding parts. And number 4 is what, class? Now, I'm not done yet, but I want to now expose something to you. With the way we have written, you will think you're actually correct. My note is perfect. Introductory part, operative part, miscellaneous part, and concluding what? You see, when I told you to always adopt an eagle eyes, I know what I'm doing. Now, with what you have done, you are thinking that I've listed the 4 parts. But there's one major step I've not yet taken. And I will not take the step yet until I now paint a scenario for you so you understand the power of learning with an eagle eye. In one of the bar exams, they now ask, one of the following parts is not mandatory, and they listed all 4 again. One of the following parts is not what? And all 4 options was listed. And some of you who are members of council say, come. Number 4 is bonus, so there's no answer. All these are the part of what? Deed. Now, let me tell you now, before I answer that question, go back to miscellaneous parts and add the word if any. Go back. This is what I've not done anything yet. Go back to miscellaneous parts I add the word what? Have something transformed in your note already? Out of all the 4 parts, there's one that has if any, Abi? I hope you know what if any represents. Your former notes that I gave you before and what I just did now, they are not the same thing. Some of you are reading without paying attention. And that's how I'm showing you the mistake we make. Now, if they ask me that same question again, which of the parts is not what? I wouldn't even think twice. My answer is miscellaneous. Why? Because it has the word if any. And these are the mistakes some of you don't pay attention to. You pick up a book, you read them, you are not checking the details. Are they putting the right choice of words I should use? You say, no, let me just read. It's law school now, we need to just cover. You can't cover. The book has to cover you too. You cover the book will cover. If you are reading a book that cannot cover you, it's a red flag again. You are covering the book, you are not being covered. That's danger now. If you go to the exam, you try to remember the book, you say, this book no cover me. Oh. Because as you cover the book is supposed to cover you. It's a two-way thing. Now, class, which of the parts is not mandatory? Now, before now, if I had not put the word if any, you would have struggled to know the answer. You would have been like, which part again? All of them are there now. But please, if any, connote that miscellaneous part is not what? Mandatory. For the last time, what are the 4 parts of a deed? 1, 2, 3, and lastly, now what if the question now come in this format? List the mandatory part of a deed. Will you list 4? Are you see what's happening now, class? List the mandatory part of a deed. How many will you be listing? And this will happen in theory. And some of you still list 4. You still list 4. And you will not even see the word mandatory. Because you have already crammed the question that you have set to the bar exam. You already know the question. So you go to the bar exam and say, let me give them my own answer. Please, it's not about your own answer. Go to the bar exam and see what the examiner expects from you. So let's continue. Let's start with the first one. Introductory parts. What are we looking at now? So out of the 4 parts, we are bringing them one after the other. So we are starting with introductory what? Now let's write. This part is made up of 4 contents or clauses. Now listen again, class. This part is made up of 4 contents or clauses. Now what am I trying to say? If you don't see the word content, what will you see? I'll say it again. This part is made up of 4 contents or what? Now let's write. The contents are, want to find out what are the likely contents. The contents are 1, commencement. 1 is what? We are taking it step by step, please. Number 1 is what? Commencement. Number 2, dates. Class, number 2 is what? Number 3, parties. Number 3 is what? Number 4, recital. I am not done yet again. Number 4 is what? Now listen again. As your note is, you may have the tendency and say, oh, yeah, he mentioned 4. He listed 4. And there's nothing more. Let's go to the bar exam. And you went to the bar exam. Then I ask you, one of the following clauses is not mandatory in the introductory part. I'm like, wait. Is there every time that there's no mandatory thing here? Now before I answer this question, go back to your notes now. Beside recital, add the word if any again. Add the word what? Now look at your note again. There's a change, Abi. Now in this change, what do you observe? Which of the content of the introductory part is not mandatory? Now listen carefully. You see, it means that when there's a recital, there should be a change. And when there's no recital, we should see the positive what? Change. So we're going to observe that very shortly. So please, what are the 4 contents of the introductory part? Number 1. Number 2. number 3, and number 4. So those of you who drafted commencement and date, I hope you saw what you are doing, Abi. You are trespassing. I'm going to sue you. But you are telling me, those of you telling me calm down, you are one of the suspects. You are saying calm down. I'm not saying anything. Now let's continue. Commencement. Let's start with what? Now listen carefully. We are starting with the word what? Now listen. Now when it's about time to draft, I keep telling students, drafting is not only about content, but also about form. So when you add content and form, it becomes precedent. I'll say it again. Drafting is not only about content, it's about the format. When I mean format, everybody knows that the content of commencement is this deed of assignment. But the form is that it should be in upper case. It should be in what? So we're going to be drafting the commencement, but please, all should be in upper what? Upper case means in capital letter. So let's write. This deed of assignment. Full stop. This deed of assignment. Commencement. How do we draft commencement, class? How do we draft commencement, class? So let's stop. So if a question now say this, because nobody, law school will not say draft deed of assignment, so they will never. What they will rather say is this. Please pay attention. Mr. A transferred his unexpired what? Residue. Now it's not left for you to identify what transaction is that. When we say transfer of unexpired residue as our yesterday class, what do we mean? Sale of land, Abi? Now the question will now be, draft the commencement of the final document. Of which document now? Now will you draft contract of sale of land? Why? That one is an initial what? And that's why I keep telling you, class, it's not about drafting deed of assignment. It's about knowing the principle. Now you can be able to differentiate between initial and what? But before now, you did not even care. All you wanted to draft was deed of what? Assignment. Law school is not about draftee. Let me tell you the truth. You will draft though, but one of the things you will do in this class is that for you to draft, you must learn the application. Because many times, students go to buy, especially in civil litigation, you'll be drafting beautiful drafting, fine, but zero. Instead of you to draft motion on notice, you draft motion. Instead of you to draft memorandum of appearance, you draft plenary object. You know how to draft very well, but your application is zero. You keep drafting the wrong thing. Instead of you to know when not to draft affi, you added affidavit, supported with exhibit to be relied upon. Only you. And in that case, affidavit is not applicable. There's so many, it's not about drafting. It's about learning the principle. Now what am I trying to teach? You can't draft deed of assignment because it's sale of land. You only draft deed of assignment, one, if the transaction is on sale of what? And the question is on final document. So how do we draft the commencement for deed of assignment? Now let's go to number 2, or B, dates. What are we going to now, class? We have succeeded in drafting commencements. We want to succeed in drafting dates. Are we ready to draft dates? Now, but please listen. We are not going to be in a hurry to draft date. I'll tell you why. Don't write, just listen. I just want to prep your mind ahead. Now, you see, when it comes to dates, there are 2 formats of drafting dates. There are many formats. So I'm going to be drafting 2 dates for you. But it's not about the draft. It's about when to use format A and when to use format what? So let's try it. Dates. Let's write. Made this dash day of dash 2023. Smaller case, not upper case. Upper case stop with commencement. Made this dash day of dash 2023. Made this what? Of dash 2020 what? Or I think I'm going to draft 2 drafts, so I'm going to teach you later. Or is made, you tell me what you observe, but let's draft. Or is made this dash day of dash 2023. Or you go to the next line. Is made this dash day of what? dash 2023. Now, if you observe, both of them are dates. But who can tell me one additional word I added? Now, let's write. The word is must be inserted once the deed has a recital. The word is must be what? Inserted once the deed contains a what? Recital. The word is must be what? Inserted once the deed contains a what? Recital. Now let me tell you one mistake people make in bar exam. You know that you don't want to draft recital, but law school says draft the introductory part. I say yes, so I don't like that recital. It's too long. Let me just draft the introductory part without recital. But this is what you now did. This deed of assignment is made. The moment you write the word is made or the word is, the examiner is expecting a recital. So what you should do is to go back and cancel the word is. Someone says, is it not just is I put? No. The presence of the word is implies that that deed must contain a word? Recital. Now this is not just drafting. I have seen MCQ again. They now said, a deed without recital. A deed without what? Recital. Will be dated as dash. MCQ. A deed without what? Recital. Will be what? A. Made this dash day of dash. B. Is made this dash day of dash. D. Signed, sealed, and delivered. You know that's not it already, Abi? And D is none of the above. Now you are not bothered. Is he made this dash of dash or is made? A deed without recital, you will not need the word is. So any those of you that always look at some textbook or draft book and all the deed always carry the word is, and you have crammed it. This deed of assignment is made. This deed of assignment is. Be ready to provide what? Recital. And if you don't want to provide recital, you would rather say, this deed of assignment made this dash day of dash. So one of the benefits of recital is that, you know, it has the word if what? Any. Which is saying it's not mandatory. So what it means is this. If you now insert recital, the evidence of inserting recital is the presence of the word is. And if there's no recital, you remove the word is. So how do we draft dates and commencement together without recital first of all? I said draft commencement and date without recital. How will you draft it? Now, if the deed of assignment contains a recital and they say draft date and commencement only, how will you draft it? Is made. Now, how do you know that the deed of assignment has a recital? The word what? Is. So a lawyer now, for example, you are told to peruse a deed of assignment. One of the fastest way of knowing whether the deed has a recital is that once you open the deed and you just see the date, they carry the word is. It means that it must be bound to have a recital. So is that point very clear, class? Now let's go to the next heading, parties. The next is what? Yes, parties now. We are done with dates. Now we are looking at what? Now listen carefully. Before we draft parties, let me say this. There are some times that parties may be two. And there are sometimes parties may be three or more. Now, but the problem is not about the parties being two, being three, or being more. The major problem is how do you apply them in certain circumstances. So for this reason, I'm going to be drafting parties in three different ways. One, parties involving two people. Two, parties involving three persons. And three, parties involving artificial person. I'll say it again, don't drive, just listen. We are going to be drafting parties, but in three different formats. One, parties involving two persons or two parties. Two, parties involving three. And the third one, parties involving artificial what? Person. We want to find out how are they couched and how do we draft the content and the what? Form. So let's start with the first one, two parties. Write two parties before we draft. Under parties, just write A, 2 parties. A is what? So we want to draft for 2 parties. A, we have is 2 what? Now listen, before drafting for 2 parties, there are 2 co-joining words we're going to be using. That word is the word between. The word is what? Now this word between should be in upper case. Please don't go and put between column dash. This is not chart sheet. This is not application. So the between is just a sentence. So that the between only will be in upper what? And the next thing I will tell you again, we return back to lower what? You will come back to upper what? Then return back to lower what? So we're going to be doing it uppercase, lowercase, uppercase, lowercase. Now the between is going to be in upper. So let's write between. How are you writing your between? Now when we continue, please continue in lowercase. Don't go to the next line. It's in the same paragraph. Between Mr. Yusuf David. Between Mr. what? Yusuf David of number 3 Law School Road. It's only between that should be in uppercase from now. Between is the only thing that is in uppercase. Everything that I'm saying other than between should return back to lower what? Be paying attention. Don't be doing Between Mr. what? Yusuf David of number 3 Law School what? Abuja. Bracket open. As I know, close the bracket. Bracket open. As I know, close the what? Of the one part. Of the one part. Of which part? Now stop now. Continue again, but this time, the next word I'm going to be saying is and. And that and will be in upper and. Are you seeing why I'm putting the and now? How many uppercase have we drafted so far? What are the 2 uppercase? Good. And Mr. Chike Jonathan. And Mr. Chike what? Jonathan of number 5 Law School Road. And Mr. Chike Jonathan of number 5 Law School what? Road, Abuja. Then bracket open, assignee, close the bracket of the other part. Full stop. Assignee of the what? Now listen carefully. Assignee bracket of the what? Now listen to what I'm going to tell you to underline without even you paying attention to. Now first of all, let's recite parties in drafting deed where we have 2 parties. How do we draft them? Between who? Now this is what you do for me. Now listen, underline the one part, underline the other part. Don't underline it in by exam. There's something I want to show you. Don't worry. You have been drafting, you have been reading, but you have not observed. I want to now show you. Underline the one part, underline the other what? Now listen, when we use one part and refer the other party as the other part, the legal implication is that there are just 2 parties involved. How many parties? Now you might see this in MCQ. And the only way you can know that the right answer is this is if you see the one part and the other what? Now the next thing, 3 parties. We have drafted for 2 parties, which everybody know already in this class. Now I want to draft. What if the parties involve 3 parties? Will we be drafting the same thing? Now, but before I draft this, let me tell you how they said this by exam. Those of you that like calling husband and wife, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, please, when it comes to legal documentation, husband and wife are seen as a separate entity. Are seen as what entity? So when they tell you that Mr. A and his wife own a property, and some of you go and draft between Mr. and Mrs. James. You are wrong already. And I know some of you will do that based on religious ground. What God have joined together, not nobody put on. Two shall become. See, morality, religion, and law are three different things. And that's why we are taught legal method in 100. But I feel it was too premature to teach students 100 level legal method because they don't even know what they're happening there. Everybody was just targeting grade. So when you want to tell them law and morality, some of you don't know that law and morality are not the same. Look at the concluded Court of Appeal judgment on Tinubu's election. Most lawyers, based on emotion, were saying that the judge would have considered what the public were saying. That the public in social media were saying that Tinubu lost the election. But let me ask you, is that how you prove in court? When I was, to those of you in second time, when I was teaching you evidence, did I say one of the proof of evidence in court is by emotion, public opinion? Emotion, morality cannot be used in law. Law is law. Some lawyers have received insult because of that judgment. They have come say, my child will never study law. We reply them. That's if your child will even get up the cutoff mark. Yes. If they continue, yes. As a result, we throw back to you. Let your child first of all get cut off before we know whether I can study law. And all of them, they stopped because we were not keeping quiet. They fire us, we fire them back. I think it's easy to study law because you just feel like just being insulted. I don't blame them because of those lawyers that went to beg them for 10 naira brief. That's why they are talking anyhow. But let's continue. We are now drafting for 3 what? Parties. Please, what I'm trying to say, if you see a scenario where they say husband and wife has the property together and they want to sell, it will be wrong to call them Mr. and. So I'm going to teach you how you, and you know when there are 2 people holding the practice, it means we have 2 assignors, Abi? And we are selling to 1 assign. So look at it. 2 assignors. Selling to how many assignee? Some of you, if I have told you to draft the whole introductory part, you would have gotten it wrong in today's exam. Let's bring out our today's snap test and look at what I'm saying. Bring out the question on your snap test. Let's go to reality. If you look at your snap test, 2 persons were trying to buy property from a family, 3 of us. So if you count the number of parties that were there were like 5 parties there. You heard me. If I've asked you to draft the introductory part today, you would have drafted nonsense. Sorry to say that. Let me show you the 5 parties. Now let me start with the first 2 parties. Now, the name of their enterprise, because this is not a company, this is a business, so they do not possess jurisdiction per se. Some of you that are using the enterprise as a party, but be very careful. Corporate law has to enter property law in this case. Now, the name of the party in this case is Mr. Agbato Ezenwa and Chief Bernard Ojofabi. How many parties is that? Now, these 2 people are the assignees. How many assignees do we have there? Now, let's go to the assignee of people selling. The property is a family land which was represented by the following person. Chief Kuru Enafa, Madam Sonia Enafa, and Mr. Faje, who? How many people do we have now? Now, 3 plus 2 is how many? So what are the total number of parties we have here? We have 3 assignors and 2 assignees. Now, this is what exactly I'm saying. If I have left you, you'd have done between one part and other parts. Because that's how you draft. That's why you see most draft books. You don't blame them. Because you see, most times they may not even have the time to express what they want to say. But please, there is a time to draft for 2 parties, and there's a time to draft for 2 or more what? So I'm going to be finding out how do we draft parties where they are not 2, but more than what? So let's start. Between, I'm going to use that scenario so that it will make more sense. I'm not going to use example. I want to use the scenario that we just did now. So you say 3 or more what? Parties. Bring the question again. Bring out your questions because that's the name we are using for the draft. Between Chief Kuruku and Nafa. Look at the last line. Be careful. It's not the, look at him here. Some of you used to think that it's because of the first name you see. is the assignor. The last name is his assignor. Read your scenario. The people up were the one trying to buy. The family land are the people trying to sell. So look at it. You are using the scenario to draft this one now. Between Chief who and Nafa. Now, because there is, now listen, why I'm using this scenario to teach you this. Because there is an express address where the property is located. And the property is located at number 4, about what? Are you seeing number 47 Aba Road? Located at number 47 Aba Road, Port Harcourt. Are you seeing it? Now let's continue. They want to acquire, okay, no. They authorized Mr. Aguda Bachelor, located at the assignees, the Doni, yes, but the property is situated at number 37 to 40, Stadium what? Room and Mercy. So let's draft it. Between Chief what? Of number 33 to 43. Between Chief Kuruku and Nafa of number 37 to what? 43 Stadium Road. Are you seeing what I'm saying? It's in your scenario, and I say bring out your scenario. If you have your scenario, I'm drafting based on the scenario I gave you. There is a place called 37 to 47 Stadium Road, Rumumasi, Port Harcourt. Have you all seen it? Yes. 37 to 43. Have you seen it? Yes. So let's use that scenario to draft it. Between Chifu, or what number? 37 to 43 rather. Stadium what? Rumumasi. Don't cram anything. Copy and paste what you are seeing there. Rumumasi, Porter, River State. Which state class? Bracket open. As I know. Bracket open. What did I say? I'll say it again. Between. Where's your chief? Look at what I'm drafting now. Look at it. This is Chief Kuruku Enafa. Habana, don't put under pressure now. This is how you draft in by exam. You have to identify all the parties before you. I'm using this as a clean example. Between Chief Kuruku and Nafa of 37/43. Stadium what? Rumumasi, Port Harcourt. River what? And who is he? Of the first part. What is happening now? Of the first part. Of which part? Now let's pause. Of the first what? Go back to where it was two parties and look at what we wrote when we said as I know. What did we say before? We call that one of the one. What are we calling this one now? Now listen, where there are more than two parties, we don't use of the one part and of the other part. What we use is of the first part, second part, third part, fourth part, fifth part, and so on. Now let's continue. And uppercase, so don't forget your uppercase. And everything and go to the next person in that scenario. Who is the next person? Madam Sonia who? So write her name. And Madam Sonia, please, I will not, at this stage, can't be telling me where it is. You should know already. Madam who? Who? Of the same address. This is a family property. Of what address? To 43. Stadium Road. Stadium what? Rumumasi, Port Harcourt, River State. Bracket open. As I know again. I hope you know why I say as I know. Class, I hope you know why I say as I know. They are family property. They are all selling. But this time, I've written as I know, close the bracket, and write of the second part. As I know. You're not writing now. As I know of which part now? And again, yes, uppercase. Who is the third person? Write his name. And Mr. Fajay NAFA of, this is what you see. Who would have thought that this is what you would have been writing in the bar exams? Have you written the last person? That's on the assign-off part. Oh. And Mr. Fajay Enafa of the same address, 37 to 40 what? Stadium what? Road. Rumumasi, Port Harcourt, River State. As I know again. As I know, this time of the what? Third part. Class, I see what's happening now. And again, all the parties will be joined by the word and. Now this time, we are done with the assignors. No. Third, T-H-I-R-O-D. The second, C-E. First, second. No, but you can use that. Oh. No, you can still use that. It's just 10. You can still use that. First, second, third. Of the third what? What are you writing now? I'm telling somebody correction. You're writing first, second, third. Now let's continue. And be careful now. And go to the next person. Mr. Agbato Ezenwa. No, it's not chief. It's Mr. It's not chief. Chief is the name of the business enterprise. Yes, now I'm coming. I'm not done yet. I'm not done, sir. And I said of the third part. I'm done with that person already now. Of the third part. And again, how will I say the third part? That's what I'm teaching. And look at the person I'm talking about, Mr. Agbato Ezenwa. And Mr. what? Of 45 Starline Estates. How do you know I'm getting 45 Starline Estates from? Yes. Learn how to interact with your scenario. Stop cramming drafting. Some of you have cram. You want me to give you an example? No. We are going to use this question to answer the drafts. I hope you know I'm getting 45 from. It's not from my brain, no. I am doing copy and all I go to the whole with is of the first part, second part, third part, fourth part, and the rest information. I am getting it from the bar finals exam. Copy and who? Mr. Who? Agbato Ezenwa of number what? Starline what? GRA what? Reverse. Bracket open. Assignee. I hope you know what we are calling this person assignee now. Class, I hope you know what we are calling the person assignee. Of the fourth part. So when there are more than one party, it keeps going. If there are 30 people, of the first to the 30th person. Of which part now? Of the fourth what? And again, Chief Bernard Ojofor. And Chief Bernard, yes. It's not Ojofor now. Did you see A there? See. Bernard. It's a lie. Let me check.
Sorry, it was a mistake. Nothing, I'm serious.
You are drafting claimants, defendants. And Chief who? Ojofor of still the same 40 Starline what? Estate. Who? All the and are in upper case there. And Chief Bernard Ojofor of Starline Estate, GRA what? Port Harcourt, River State, assignee of the fifth part. Of how many parts? So how many parties do we have so far, class? Now this is what you are supposed to draft in by exam, but this is what many of you will never even think of. Are you seeing the difference, class, now? If I've asked you in by exam, draft the introductory parts, that's from commencement, date, parties. Some of you will just pick two names. Some of you even pick the business name. Chief Ojofor and Son Enterprise of the one part, and the family of the other You must see, and most of the textbook you have, and even the draft book, is only of two parties they have. And you, when you don't see that there are more than two parties, you think it doesn't exist. But in law, it is it's what you don't see that law school is looking for to set by exams. So they are looking for those unseen things. Since you have not seen, they will look for it and set by exams. So class, do you observe the difference between two parties and three parties now? Now, if it is two parties, it is just of the one part and the other what? But when the parties involved are more than two, that is 3, 4, 5. You have of the first part, of the second, of the third, of the fourth, and of the fifth part. Let's go to the third one. Parties involving artificial persons. Parties involving artificial persons. Parties what? Parties involving artificial what? Persons. I'll say it again. Parties involving artificial what? Now, sadly, this scenario did not have a proper artificial person. When we say artificial person, we mean corporate entity that can sue and be what? Sued in its corporate name. Now, I'm going to give an example. Now, let's imagine that Skybank wants to sell one of its property to an individual. How then do you draft the parties involving Skybank? And you all know that Skybank is a public company which is incorporated with corporate affairs. How do you draft for artificial person? Now let's find out. Parties involving artificial what? Between again, uppercase. Between uppercase. Skybank Nigerian PLC. Between Skybank Nigerian what? PLC. I'll say it again. Between Skybank what? Comma, a company incorporated with Corporate Affairs Commission. Some of you would have gone straight to the address. Skybank PLC of number 5. Stop it. Don't go anywhere. Between Skybank Nigerian PLC, comma, a company incorporated with Corporate Affairs what? Whose registered office? Whose registered office? Whose? WHOSE. Calm down. Whose what? Is at number 5, Victoria Island Lane, Lagos. Look at what I just did. Is that what? Number 5. Situate at number 5. Victoria what? Island Lane, Lagos. Bracket open. As I know of the one part. As I know of the what? One part. Close the bracket of as I know of the one part. Now listen to the mistake we would have made. Please, no noise. Now one of the mistakes we would have made before now would have done like this. Skybank PLC of number what? 5. Victoria Island Lane. As I know of the what? Now you are drafting artificial person as if he's a natural person. It's wrong. When a company is involved, you must describe the company in its full capacity. Some even people go far to even say registered under Part B. That's if you are using the word companies and allied matters. If you are saying registered under Part B, then we'll use company and allied matters what? But if you are using the word corporate affairs, we are using the word incorporation. So be careful. So if I wanted to use Part B, I would have said registered under Part B of the companies and allied matters what? 2020. Whose registered address? But I'm using the other word. There are two ways. You must have seen two formats. One is they use corporate affairs or they use the part of karma. But this one is actually preferable. So how do we draft for artificial person in parties involved? How do we draft it? Between who? A company what? Whose what? Of the what? Dash, dash, dash. Now let's go to the next thing. Recital. Yes, please. Recital. I'm not done now. I'm going to recital, ma. Why will you be asking me a question I've not taught? You forgot. Don't be carried away, please. Yes, recital. If it's just what? Business are not a social person now. They don't have juristic personality now. Don't be using civil. Trade under the name and style of. It's civil litigation now. Let's go to recital, please, Biko. Recital. Are we in recital class? Now let's write. Generally, recital are not compulsory. I'll say it again. Generally, recital are not what? Compulsory. We're going to do something very shortly, but pay attention. Generally, recital are not what? Compulsory. That's why we have the word if any, Abi. Generally, recital are not what? Compulsory. Now let's try. However. So what did I just say? However. Now you know that however means exception, Abi? Yes. Okay, good. However, it becomes mandatory if the property is a family property. We're going to be going back to our scenario very shortly. However, it is mandatory if the property is a what? Family property. I'll say it again. However, it becomes what? Mandatory if the property is what for property? Family property. Now we are familiar with our scenario. My question is our scenario a family property? Yes. Is our scenario a family property? Yes. Now, do you know what law school does? They will tell you, draft the introductory parts of the final document to be executed in the transaction requiring sale of what? Land, for example. Now, in this case, you cannot say recital is optional. You cannot again. Because the question carries family what? Property. In this case, recital become a must. What did I say? Recital become a what? Must. Now listen, before I go into the drafting of recital, some people, when they want to now draft this recital, you will see word like this. Whereas, background. If you don't want to go back to your background, stop that thing. All those things are archaic way of drafting recital. Currently now, recital is drafted in the following way. So let's draft the recital. This deed recites as follows. In uppercase, please. In uppercase. This deed recites as what? Follows. Then you put a column, a dot up and a dot down. This deed recites as what? A dot what? And a dot what? Then you write under it A. This deed recites as what? So when you pick a book that says whereas, red flag. Background, red flag. This deed recites as what? A. The assignor is the rightful owner. When I say A, it can never in this life be uppercase. A is a sub. A, sub. Even though it's not law, English language, A. How about now? A. The assignor is the rightful owner of the property. The assignor is the what? Of the what? Situate at dash. I am putting dash because I am not the one that set your by exam. When you get there, find the property and put the address by yourself. I'll say it again. A. The assignor is the what? Rightful owner of the property. Situate at what? Now listen, if we were to use this question to answer this exam, it will be The assignor is the rightful owner, and listen, it's not assignor, it's assignors. Because in that scenario, there were three. So it's not about cramming, it's about application. Something's in your mouth, so let's move to the next person. The assignor would have been the rightful owner of property situated at number 37 to Stadium. You know what I'm trying to say now? Rumomasi, Port Harcourt. That's if this were to be the question, no. That's if this were to be the. But for now, put dash so that when you get to the exam, any property they tell you, because if I give you property now, you go and cram somebody else's property. If I tell number 4, you have crammed it. I'm not cramming property. Yeah, your question, so we can move fast. Yes, it's not commencement part, it's recital itself. I know you are trying to say. Background, whereas. Oh, you're not. No, you left the class to pick up. No, you're not here. I said it that days to you see background. Whereas if you use it, it means the examiner will know that you are reading a book written in 1999. They are outdated. Even though you are seeing them in books that look recent, they did not care to update the current recital. The current recital is this deed, recite as what follows. You are wrong if you use whereas or you use background. You are very wrong. You use this deed, recite as what follows. Let's go to B. B. The assignor is willing to assign. B. The assignor is willing to what? Assign. Listen, class. B. The assignor is willing to what? Assign. And the assignee is willing to take possession. Okay? Okay, this is not a conjoining of two parties, so it's more lowercase. The assignor is willing to what? Assign. And the assignee is willing to take possession. And the assignee is willing to what? Take possession. Now let me beg you. Some reciter people used to see is like 3 pages reciter. You are cramming somebody else's reciter to go and write a bar exam that did not belong to that person. How do you survive? How do you even survive? Some of you know what I'm saying. You pick up a draft book, you will see reciter very long. You'll be cramming it. And that one even starts with the word whereas. You know what I'm saying? Did you cram the entire content of it? You for cram them now. In bar exam that you don't even have time, it's even better to just say, this deed, recite as what? And even leave it. You have tried. That statement alone is more important than the word whereas. Are you see the difference now? Now, but what are we reciting? There are 2 things we are reciting. A, that the assignor is the rightful owner of the what? And number 2, that the assignor is willing to. And who? Now, before we go to the next thing, let's recite from commencement to recital. Now, by saying from commencement to recital, I want all technicality to be in place. I did not say from commencement remove recital. I said from commencement to what? Recital. Can we recite it? Yes. Now let's go. How do we draft it? Alright, let's pause first. Some of you are laughing. Some of you to follow other people to recite. You are laughing. In the best time, you will not laugh. You will recite it whether you like it or not. So let's recite from commencement to recital. From beginning, say it again. Now this one use 2 parties. Don't waste your time. 2 parties. Continue. Now let me explain to you. See, when it comes to property law, there is no year in the 62 years of law school existence that they have never asked this topic. And if they ask this topic, it's a complete 7 mark, undisputed. So it's not about, some of you don't see, let me tell you, they all call strategic reading. Some students use past question not to read. They use past question to checkmate law school. Checkmate. To know what kind of question law school can set. So they just read only those areas. But sometimes law school can chalk them and checkmate them. But let me tell you, for the past 10 years, law school have failed to checkmate them. Some students read only past question and made a 2-1. There's a guy that made a first class. They even regretted interviewing him. After making a first class, he was part of the people that entered interview, and they asked him, can you educate other people how you make a first class? He said, me? Oh, I just read their past question and they always repeat question. And they removed the mic away from him immediately. There are some media acts you don't see, I'm telling you. They wanted those who they will give mic and they'll say, I spent 10 hours on... This guy said for him, he read past what? And most of the questions he read came out verbal. He just copied and that's how he got his first class. And they were mad. That why would you say such a thing, boys? See, people are not telling us the truth. That's why you think making first class is difficult. People are hiding the truth, making you feel that they read 10 hours. It's not, some of them did not even read. Their friend have told them that, see, law school repeat pass, go to so and so year, copy and when you do that, make sure the answers are up there. That's what they do. So all their life was just past question. And naturally, they are actually intelligent, to be found. Naturally. So when they read the question, they know the area. Let me tell you the truth. Let me give you an example. Please, let me say this. Don't use it as a yardstick, but let me say this. Don't use it as a yardstick, but let me what? I've been teaching for 10 years now. And in 10 years I've been teaching students of the law school. I have observed several things. And I told the receipt student last year, I said, see, to be sincere with you, law school always think that I know the answer they said, but sadly it's not true. 10 years experience is not a joke, teaching for 10 years. So what I now told them that, having observed the question that they said, I can tell you, for receipts, go and observe. They set mortgage for receipt students, and they set lease for regular students as 2 ends of the question. Sale of land is compulsory in both ends. Wills is compulsory. But when I want to make decision on these 2 topics, mortgage, go to receipts. Lease, go to what? Regular. And I told them, I said, take note. He catch them. Receipts, mortgage. The regular that year, lease, compulsory. I said, but I told you guys, they have a pattern. But you see, many of you, when you even pick past question, you're only just to read. You are not studying the pattern. If you are intelligent, you don't just read past question, you study their what? Now, do you know that by that pattern you have been studying, do you know that charges, like all of you already know, charges is always number 1? Is that not true? Yes. Have you seen any criminal litigation that is not charges number 1? And but this is the pattern again, you are not studying. Now, did you also observe that sometimes they might be writing information. And when information is getting too much, the next year will be charged. If I were you, when I'm studying 2016 to 2022, I am not studying the answer. I am seeing the pattern they have been following all these. I'll be able to predict the next pattern. But what people do, you will rather cram the answer. You say you are a student. You are not just students. See, as a lawyer, let me tell you, as a lawyer, one of the things we are supposed to teach you is ability to be smart and observe. Don't be that play bet. You know what they call short order, be? With the way Chelsea is playing, we have already bet that on Saturday Aston Villa will beat Chelsea. And if we manage to win, it's by luck. Short on. We know that Arsenal did not play anything, they did not play it, they will still win. We know that Man City, if you give them one go ahead, they will come back and equal and still win. Man U Bayern, short on. Who will win? It's the same thing. You not tell me that even in your, let me tell you the truth, even in your university, if you wanted to make a first class, it's you that did not even want to, you did not even try. Not that because you did not plan it, you did not try. If you wanted to try, you would have gone to your previous student notes. Your lecturer, they have been teaching this for 32 years and they have not changed anything. Copy and you know, past question, there was not a good thing of business there, so you don't get. If you were able to get past question of last year, you will see that they just copy and We'll find out. Past question. The same thing. But university, your mind has not grown to that. So you are just, if you know, you would have said, my senior, all those questions they bring it for me. Yes, now. I'm telling you. No. No, they will not shock you. Use it, but don't use the answer at the. That's the difference. In university, the answer is copy and law school. Don't try copy and paste too, because most of the answers provided are not provided by law school again. So that's another damage. Because now listen, I have seen some questions that students will send me and say, I said, where do you even get this answer? They say it's from past question at the back. I said they are wrong now. Now listen, those of you that did second term, let me just give an idea. There was a topic I taught you, option available to the defendant during his defense. During his what? Defense. And I compare it with option available to the defendant during arraignment. In arraignment, we have standing mute. We have refusal to plea. We have plea of not what? And in defense, we have no case what? We have resting on possession what? And we have entering of what? Now, why am I laying this foundation? Please listen. Compulsory number 1B, they were number 4B, they were asking the students, and in that scenario, the question was, the prosecution has closed its case. Prosecution of what? The defendant has now opened his, and he remained silent. He did what? Then I asked, what other options are available to him at this point? Guess what the answer provided? Preliminary objection, standing mute, refusal to plea, plea of not guilty. And you see, if you're not careful, you will cram it. What the answer is given is option available during arraignment. But these students have already crammed the answer, digested it, and sent me for verification. And I said, thank God you sent me, oh, thank God. Did you cram it? He said, yeah. I said, delete it. You see, that's the problem. Most of the people, when they want to answer a question, they don't sit down and answer the question. They sit down and think of the money they want to make. Listen to what I've just said. They don't sit down to answer the question. They rather sit down and look at the money they want to what? When you go and buy past question in most Mami market, do you verify? Or you say, arrange 2016 to 2022 for me, please. Add the recent one. Market scheme, don't they? Where do you get the marking scheme from? And some campus, and they don't allow this past question to near their campus. Like Kano, they did not Lagos. They don't allow it. And those will say, Abuja campus, because most campus don't even have past questions. They don't even know what past question look. They don't. What you see is WhatsApp. They'll be doing PDF, sharing from everybody. That's what they've answered 2002 to date. And when I look at those answers, I'll say, hey, God. I can't be coming to everybody's room and say what you are reading is correct or wrong. Hope you know that. There's no time. So you have to guide yourself and your mind too. Please. Now let's continue. So how do we draft for the last time all the introductory part? How do we draft it? Are you tired? Okay, don't worry. Let me do it by myself. The way you are sounding, people online now will be confused whether something is going on here. Now listen. This deed of assignment is made on the dash day of what? Dash 20 dash between A address assignor of the one part and B address assignee of the other what? Then I say this deed recite as what? The assignor is the rightful owner, and the assignor is willing to assign, and the assignee is willing to take what? All we have drafted is called the introductory part, and it begins from commencement and end with recital, if any. But who can tell me when recital become a must? So with the scenario for today's snap test, is recital mandatory? Yes. Why? Are you getting the logic now? So it's not about saying if any. Find out when it becomes mandatory. The next thing we're going to be looking at briefly, operative parts. We are done with the introductory parts, class. It is time stolen the operative parts of a deed of what? Assignment. Now let's write. The operative part is made up of 7 content or clauses. I'll say it again. The operative part is made up of 7 what? Content or what? Clauses. The operative part is made up of how many contents? 7 content or what? Clauses. Now let's write. Number 1, we have is testatum. Number 1 is called what? Class, listen. Number 1 is called what? Now listen, by the time I'm done teaching it, one of the things you'll be walking away with this class is without looking at any reference, you will know the 7 parts. Not only knowing them, but you will know them in their chronological order. So number 1 is what? So let's start with that. What is the first content of the operative part? So we're not rushing. We're not going to say 7. No, we're going to take it step by what? So the first one is what? Number 2, consideration. Number 2 is what? Now listen, class. Number 2 is what? Now I'm not pausing now. Please listen carefully. Whenever there is a consideration means money has been paid. There's always an evidence of the payment, which is the received clause. So after every consideration, there's always a receipt. So write receipt clause after consideration. After every consideration, there's always a what? Receipt clause. So write receipt clause as number 3. Yes. Receipt clause become what? Number 3. Now listen. When you pay money, there must be a proof that the money has been received. And that proof is in the receipt. The payment is in the consideration. So consideration is always followed by receipt what? So can we recite the first 3? Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Again, the first 3. 1. Number 2. And 3 is what? Now imagine, out of 7, we have listed 3. Remaining 4. It's easier. But if you want to now know all 7 straight, no, that's not. Learning is in stages. Just the same way men are in what? Sizes. That's the truth. What are the first 3? Number 1. Followed by what? Followed by what? Now listen carefully. Number 4 is capacity clause. Number 4 is what? Class, number 4 is what? You want to bust my ear? Number 4 is capacity what? Open a bracket and write covenant of title. Now listen. My emphasis is capacity clause, but also known as what? Covenant of title. It's because of 2 different authors. Some author will use capacity what? Another author will use covenant of what? So be careful of both. They are the same thing. Now listen. After capacity clause, number 5 is word of grant. Number 5 is what? Now let me say this. It is only someone that have capacity that can assure you a word of what? If you don't have capacity, can you give a word of grant? We don't take your word seriously. Let me give an example. Musicians have been able to explore this area. When Davido was singing about Chioma assurance, Abi. He was telling Chioma, I will give you assurance, Abi. And Chioma was very assured because Davido has capacity. Now listen. But when it was time for Daddy Shoki to sing, Daddy Shoki did not sing assurance. Daddy Shoki rather sing food no day. Now Gary with a drink, Abi. Everybody sing according. Now there's a time that P-Square was singing Chop My Money, Abi. There was a time that P-Square later sang there was no money to chop. Or which one again did you sing? Reason with me, Abi. So it is only those with capacity that can give word of what? Grant. So for every capacity clause, there's always a word of what? So let's recite the first 5. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And what always follow capacity? For the last time, the first 5. Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. And number 5 now. Now listen carefully. We are going to number 6 and 7 to conclude it. Now number 6 is called the parcel clause. Number 6 is called what? I will explain. Number 6, parcel clause. Number 6 is what? Now listen, the parcel clause describes the property in totality. But anytime you describe the property, you must always tell us the interest that is left. You must always tell us the word what? Now the interest that is left is contained in what we call the habendum. It's called what? So number 7 is habendum. Number 7 is what? Class, number 7 is what? Now if you watch my teaching, this is what I'm trying to establish. Out of the 7 contents, only testatum stand on it. Whenever there is a consideration, there's always a receipt. Whenever there is a capacity, there's always a word of. And whenever there is a parcel clause, you will tell us the haben. So who can recite the 7 contents of the operative part? Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5, number 6, and lastly. Now who can recite this without looking at his or her notes? You want to try, Ngozi? Close your notes. Close it again.
Hallelujah. Okay, testatum, consideration clause, receipt clause, capacity clause, word of grant, parcel clause,
who can try again? No, I'll give it a girl. If I want a man this time. Do you want to try? Okay. Now listen carefully. We want to recite the 7 contents of the operative part. Number 1.
Testatum.
Number 2.
Consideration.
Number 3.
Cap-
Number 3. Nobody try.
receipt clause.
2. Number 4.
Capacity clause.
Number 5.
Jesus Christ. Number 1, testatum. Number 2, consideration. Number 3, receipt clause. Number 4, consideration clause. Number 5, word of grant. Number 6, parcel clause. Number 7, habendum.
Now listen. Please, no noise. No noise. The 7 contents of the operative part are testatum, consideration, receipt, capacity, word of grant, parcel clause, and habendum. Now listen, please listen. In one setting here, please listen, please no noise now. The rain is already disturbing, so let's reduce the noise in the class, please. Now listen, there are 2 ways Law School can ask you to do this. Number 1, they can simply ask you, draft the operative part. Draft the what? Of the final document to be executed. They will not put deed of assignment though. If you think that they'll say draft the operative part of deed of assignment, you are joking though. It is you that will ascertain what deed it is. So draft the operative what? Of the final document to be executed. That's 1. If they don't ask you that way, they might now say, draft the following. Testatum, word of grants, parcel clause, and habendum. If they don't say it that way, they have another way to say it. This time, without drafting, they will say, list the content of the operative parts. So either which way, you have to be prepared though. All we're only prepared for is not the drafting at this point. We are only prepared if the question says, list the content of the operative part. So for the last time again, can we list the content of the operative part? Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Number 4. Number 5. Number 6. And lastly, so let's start with the first one, testatum. Stop laughing, no. Thank you. No, but let me tell you the truth, eh? Repetition of this word have a way of building your retentive memory. You see, when you learn in silence, you're not going to understand what they happen. That's the truth. So those of you online, please, I hope you are reciting after me. Not that as we are teaching, you are just writing. Recite it. Now let's continue. We are starting with testatum. Now let's write. Let's write, please. Now we're about to draft the testatum. Now listen. But the testatum is also drafted in two ways. So I'm going to be drafting two testatum and telling you the reason why I'm drafting two testatum. But please, testatum are drafted in uppercase. Are drafted in what case? So everything I will say shall be in upper words. So let's write. This deed witnesses as follows. Your column. All in upper case. This deed witnesses as what follows. I'll say it again, class. This deed witnesses as what? Put your column. A dot up and a dot down. This deed witnesses as what? Now let's write. Or is not part of the draft, though. Or means I want to introduce the second format. Or now this deed. Or now this deed. Still in uppercase, please. Or now this deed witnesses as follows. Or now this deed witnesses as what? Who can tell me what he or she observed in the two drafting? The first one had no what? Now. The second one has the word. Now let's write. The word now must be inserted in the deed once there's a recital. The word now must be inserted in a deed once there is a what? Recital. The word now must be inserted in a deed once there is a what? Recital. I'll say it again, class. The word now must be inserted in the deed once there's a what? Now listen carefully to what I'm trying to say. If there is a recital, two words automatically are added to a deed. Who can tell me those two words? We have the is and the what? Now. Without recital, there'll be no is and there'll be no what? I hope you know the content that is affected by recital now. What are the contents? No, that's my question. What are the contents that is affected by recital? The answer is date and testa. That's what I wanted you to say. What are the contents affected by recital? 1 and 2, testatum. Date in the sense that with a recital you must add the word is, and testatum in the sense that you must add the word now. So in case you ask in the bar exam, what part of or what content of a deed is affected by the presence of a recital? It is the date and the testatum. Don't go and write commencement and operative part. Oh, that's the part. I said content, date and what? Testatum. Having drafted the testatum, the next is consideration. So let's move on briefly to consideration. We have drafted. The next thing we are wanting to draft now is consideration. What are we drafting, class, now? Now let's look at how consideration is drafted. Please listen. Consideration is not drafted in upper case. It's not drafted in what case? It is a sentence. So those of you that will ask me upper case, I'm warning you now. Consideration is not drafted in upper words. So let's draft. In consideration of the sum of 5 million. Please, if you write 5 and million, me and you will quarrel. Write it in words, not in figure. In consideration of the sum of 5 million. I've written 5 million in words. Open a bracket and write it in figure in brackets. In consideration of the sum of 5 million naira only. Open a bracket, then write it in words. In consideration of the sum of 5 million naira only, open a bracket and write N, 5 in figure, comma, 0, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0, 0. Close the bracket. So if you don't know how to write 5 million, so let me walk around. And you can put it if you want to put. Better. Thank God that you corrected yourself. What you were planning to write for me is 5 billion. 5 billion, we did have added this zero. That's billion, this million. Now let's continue. In consideration of the sum of 5, F-I-V-E, million naira only, bracket open, N, 5, comma, 0, 0, 0, comma, 0, 0, 0. If you want to add dot 0K, kobo, close the brackets. Paid by the assignee. Paid by who? Continuation, please. Paid by who? To the assignor. I'll say it again, class. How do we draft the consideration? In consideration of the sum of 5 million naira only, bracket open, in figure, paid by the assignee to the assignor. How do we draft consideration, class? Can you repeat after me? Pay, who is saying, how will assignee be paying to himself? Paid by the assignee to the assignor. For the last time, how do we draft the consideration? Now let's go to the next one, receipt clause. The next is what? Now before we draft the receipt clause, it comes with a thunderous instruction. Yes. Maybe when I want to draft the receipt clause now, thunder may strike, so it's told you that it's confirmation. Listen carefully. The receipt clause comes with a thunderous what? Instruction. Now please, when drafting the receipt clause, they are always drafted in a bracket. They are always drafted in what? So if I say, let's draft the receipt clause, you must open a what? And put all I'm saying in that bracket, then close the what? So let's draft the receipt clause. Bracket open. Bracket what? Now let's write. In receipt of which the assignor hereby acknowledges. In receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Close the bracket, please. Bracket open, bracket what? Close. In receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Now when drafting the receipt clause, in what did you draft it in? In a bracket? Yes. You sure? Yes. Now in one of the MCQ the law school asks, they ask, the proper way of drafting the receipt clause is dash. They put A. Watch what they put in A. In receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Now this drafting was not enclosed in a bracket. It was just open. In receipt of which the assignor hereby what? The second one now said, in receipt of which the assignor hereby what? This time, they did not close it in a bracket. They ended the question mark. C, in witnesses of which the parties acknowledge. And D, bracket open. a receipt of which the assignor hereby what? And bracket close. Out of all the receipts that was drafted in this option, which is the most appropriate way of drafting receipt clause? So how do we draft it? No. If you want to draft it, you say bracket. Why did I open the bracket now? How do we draft receipt clause one more time? Good. And that's how you have to draft it. Don't be saying in receipt of which you are not correct. You have to open a what? Then close at the end of the what? Bracket. Now, if you are asked to draft both consideration and receipt clause, who can try? The two of them together. How do we draft it? Good. And that's what it close. So in consideration of the sum of 5 million naira paid by the assignee to the assignor, bracket open, a receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Bracket close. Now you see, let me tell you the truth. Everybody who have drafted deed of assignment is aware of this. True of us. But let me shock you. The law school is not about what you are aware of. They are more concerned about what you are not aware. And that brings us to the next thing. Part payments. Part what? Payment. What of if they did not pay in full? And what was made was part what? Payment. How do you draft for part payments? That is what we want to now learn now. There is a time all the consideration you have been seeing in textbook were consideration that the money was paid in full. But law school will now set a question. And this time, the negotiation is 200 million. But they only paid 50 million. Draft consideration. So let's draft a consideration where it is part what? Now listen to my teaching now. What I'm trying to explain to you is this. The actual amount is 200 million. That's what I'm going to be using. But out of the 200 million, the party have paid 50. Is that the total money to be paid? That means what they made is a part what? How then do you draft a consideration to reflect that this is a part what? Are you ready to learn the unseen? So let's start. In consideration of the sum of 200 million naira only. Please, at this point, I want you to pay attention. No? Don't miss out any line. In consideration, you see, I did not start with the 50 million. Class, you see, I did not start with the what? I started with the actual amount they ought to what? Pay. So what me now? In consideration of the sum of 200 million naira. In words, in consideration of the sum of 200 million naira what? Only. Now open a bracket and write N 200, comma, 000, comma, 000.00k. That is kobo. Close the bracket. In consideration of 200 million naira only. Open a bracket and write N in capital letter, naira sign. 200, comma, 000, comma, 000, dot, come on, dot 0k. 00k now. Kobo now. That's kobo now. Close the bracket. Yes, there's a kobo there. Kobo is still part of our currency. Listen carefully. In consideration of... And don't worry now. Why is your conscience judging you? I'm not going to judge you. In consideration of the sum of 200 million naira what? Now let's continue. Out of which? Out of what? How do you even expect to even write this if you don't even see it before? Out of what? The assignor paid 50 million naira. Assignee rather. Out of which the assignee paid. Out of which the what? Assignee paid 50 million naira. Out of which The assignee did what? I will run away because of you in this class. So, out of which the assignee paid 50 million naira what? Only. Open a bracket and write it in figure. Out of which the assignee paid 50 what? To the assignor. Bless you. To who, class? Class, to who? Open a bracket. In receipt of which the assignor hereby acknowledges. Close the bracket. You are lost. Oh, madam, you are lost. Say you are not lost. Better get yourself found before the end of this class. Oh. In receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Bracket what? Close. And the balance. After you have closed the receipt of which, close the bracket. And the what? Is to be paid on a date agreed by the parties. And the balance is to be paid on a date agreed by the what? Parties. Class, and the what? Is to be what? Paid on the date agreed by the what? Full stop. Now listen to what I just did now. In the bar exam, some of you are carried away with the first one, which is in consideration of the sum of 200 what? Million. Now they will not paint a scenario whereby it was part payment that was what? Made. And some of you will be lost in the exam. How do I draft for part? Sorry there. Hope no iPhone fell down. No. Okay, good. Android, they don't have Android, it's iPhone they have. Now let's continue. And you are asked to draft for part payment. How do you draft for part what? Payment. So can we decide how to draft for part payment? Now listen. Before we draft for part payment, do you notice that the receipt clause is inside the consideration? Yes. Did you observe that when drafting for part payment, you have to include the receipt inside the consideration? Yes. So let's draft it. How do we draft for part payment? Good. Are you seeing it by yourself now? Yes, so when you are asked to draft for part payments, you don't just say in consideration of sum of 50 million naira, receipt of which you are wrong. You have to tell us the total amount that was paid, 200 million. Out of the 200 million, out of which, that's why the word out of which, he did not pay 200, out of which he only paid 50. And the assignor has acknowledged to have received same. And they will agree on the dates, they will pay the outstanding balance. And that's it. In consideration of 200 million, out of which they pay 50 what? To the assignor, a receipt of which the assignor hereby what? Acknowledge. And the parties agree to pay the what? Balance on an agreed date. Yes. Yes, it's inside the consideration because it's a part payment. So they must have a receipt of the part payment they have received. That's why you have together with it. So when you are paying in full, you are drafting them separately. When you are paying, making part payment, the receipt clause will be part of the consideration, acknowledging the part payment that have been received. That's the teaching. So in a part payment drafting, there's always a receipt clause in the consideration. Is that point very clear? And lastly for today, where do we stop? We have drafted receipt clause. The next thing is capacity clause. The next thing is what class? Now I want to draft the capacity clause when it comes to operative part. Capacity clause of the operative what? Parts. Capacity clause. Now let's write. This clause is also called covenant of what? Title. This clause is also called covenant of what? Title. Class, this clause is also called what? Covenant of title. Now let's write. There are various capacity by which the assignor transfers interest. There are various capacity to which the assignor transfers what? Interest. Now listen, it's not just one capacity I will teach you. There are various capacities to which the assignor transfer what? Now let's write. These capacity are, want to find out what are these various capacity by which the assignor may choose to transfer what? Interest. These capacity are A, beneficial owner. A is that so? Now, one of the ways you transfer interest is you say the assignor as a beneficial what? Number 2, lawful attorney. It's not every time they transfer interest as beneficial what? Sometimes you are supposed to even draft the assignor as a lawful what? But some of you have crammed only assignor as a beneficial only. It's unfair now. It's unfair to other capacity. Number 3, as an executor. As what? / administrator. Another capacity you can draft is as an executor / what? Open a bracket and write personal representatives. Personal what? I'm giving you several capacity by which you can draft. As a personal representative. Number 4, as a mortgagee. Number 4 is as a what? Some people are wondering how we assign not be a mortgagee. Let me just give you a hint, because let me not lead you to confusion. Now you see, in mortgage, legal mortgage, there is a remedy called power of sale. Called what? And this remedy only takes place once the legal due date has elapsed, or when there's a breach of what? Covenant. Now when there's a breach of covenant of contract, as the lady said, what we are trying to say in essence, the mortgagee has the power to sell the mortgagor property. Now whoever he's selling it to, he's not selling as the beneficial what? Because once a mortgage is always a, so no interest is transferred to him as beneficial owner. So while selling, he will tell the assignee that I am only selling as a mortgagee. And when you see that kind of title, it means that that property they are selling is a result of default of payment of mortgage sum. What are the 4 capacities by which you can sell? Number 1. Number 2. Number 3. Also known as what? And lastly, now let's write. The most appropriate is as a beneficial owner for the following reasons. When I mean the most appropriate class, I don't mean that that's the best as to MCQ. What I mean is that if you are asked in reality, what capacity will you see, and you'll be very rest assured that this person has title. The best capacity is to sell as a what? Beneficial. The appropriate capacity is as a what? For the following reasons. Want to find out why is it selling as a beneficial owner the best capacity for the following what? Number 1, it entails that an assignee will enjoy quiet possession. Number 1, it entails that the assignee will do what? Enjoy quiet possession. I'll say it again. It entails that the assignee will do what, class? So one of the benefits of selling as a beneficial owner is enjoyment of quiet what? Number 2, that the property is free from encumbrances. Number 3, that the property is free. B, continuation. That the property is what? Free from encumbrances. That the property is free from what, class? Now listen again. It also entails that the property are free from what? C. that the assignor is the rightful owner of the property. Another effect. C, that the what? Assignor is the what? Rightful owner of the what? Property. So who can tell me the benefit of selling as a beneficial owner? 1. 2. And 3. Now let's write. This is drafted as follows. Let's look at how we draft the capacity clause. This is what? As follows. Now let me beg you, please, in drafting the capacity clause, we are not drafting in uppercase. We are drafting a sentence, usually in lower what? Now let's write. The assignor as a beneficial owner. How do you draft the capacity clause? It is drafted as the assignor as a what? Beneficial owner. The assignor as a what? And I hope you know that sometimes it can be the assignor as a lawful. Sometimes it can be the assignor as a personal representative. It can also be the assignor as a mortgagee. Not Joe, mortgagee. So how do we draft the capacity clause as it stands now? So please take note. It is drafted as the assignor as a beneficial what? Now listen carefully to the following announcements. Please, tomorrow we're going to continue with the word of what? Grant. Because that's the next thing, Abi. Word of grant is the next. Now other than word of grant, there'll be snap test tomorrow. Now the snap test is not theory. The snap test is multiple choice question. Area of concentration from yesterday's notes till where I stop today. What did I say, class? So where I stop what? So go and look at your notes. And those of you who are here to register for the class, I mean those of you online, please take out time to register for the classes and join us at the Easyread School third term revision classes. I remain your host. Obwaguna Caleb is my name and the mentor of Easyread Mentorship Group. Thank you and have a wonderful night. Bye-bye.
Please, if you want to see me, I'll be in the office. You can come and see me. Want to see me?
No, I don't see you.
You know, people who had me before now today. Yeah, how are you?